India Formula One team has gone into administration following a court hearing in London.
Administration is there to provide the opportunity to rescue and save. So no one's giving up. The team needs real funding to make sure it delivers the potential that Artmar says you can all deliver.
As long as we stay together, we will find the best possible financial solution and ownership going forward.
The future for Force India has been dominating the headlines over the summer. The team has survived after the administrators reached agreement with a consortium of investors on a rescue package.
The consortium is led by billionaire businessman Lawrence Stroll, father of 19-year-old Lance Stroll. So, could Lance soon be driving for his dad's new team?
For the moment, I'm here at Williams. I'm not sure what I'll be doing in the future. We'll see what my father decides to do with me. He's a nice guy. I hope he'll take me.
Lawrence Stroll buying the team is always going to want his son to drive for it. It's basically an open secret that Lance will move across and race for Force India.
Both drivers at the team, Sergio Perez and Esteban Ocon, will be looking over their shoulder wondering, well, which one of us is going to get the chop.
And historically, those two have not got on.
Once again, they have touched. Guys, what the fuck is this guy doing? Fucking idiot. Welcome to Spa for the Belgian Grand Prix. It's an important race for the teams, and none more so than Force India. The pressure's on to impress new boss, Lawrence Stroll.
How long are we going to wait?
My name is Otmar Safnauer, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer and Team Principal of Racing Point Force India Formula One team. It would have been a disaster disappearing mid-season. So it was tricky times, but we came out of it. The team is pretty much unchanged. Same people, same car, same desire to do well. But Lance coming to the team is probably what will happen. What it means now is losing one of our drivers.
We are facing this unsure future. It's a difficult situation for me. As a kid, I always wanted to be a racing driver. There was nothing else. I've been racing since I'm 7 years old.
How expensive is it to try and get kids into F1?
It's difficult to tell you how expensive it is exactly, but for sure for someone normal like we were, yeah, everyone was saying it's impossible, basically. My parents, they don't have a lot of money. They sacrificed a lot. We were living in a caravan for a few years, so we could go to races. Without my parents, I would not be here, for sure.
Esteban's story is amazing. He's come from nothing to having the potential to be not just a race winner, but a championship contender. But motor racing's a funny business. Talent will get you so far, but money has a massive role to play. As a driver, if you come with a bevy of sponsors who can add millions to the pot that the team has to design, to develop their car and have increased potential to score points, then the team is going to look favorably on you to take you on board as one of their drivers.
Hi, I'm Sergio Perez. I drive for Force India. I've been here 8 years in Formula One. I'm 28 years old.
F1 was always my dream.
to race with the best drivers in the world. I was always racing in Mexico, and I never thought that an opportunity to race in Europe was going to come up. It was always very expensive, so we had to find sponsors. Carlos Slim is one of the richest guys in the world. I remember calling him all the time when I was 14-year-old to give me an opportunity. We started together the dream of making it into Formula One. The career that I have is very much linked to our decisions we took together.
Sergio's always had a very strong hand at Force India because he was the money guy. He brought big sponsorship from Mexico with him, but now there's a bigger fish, and that bigger fish is Lawrence Stroll. So Sergio's not king of the hill anymore. It's anyone's guess at the moment who gets that seat. Esteban and Sergio, I don't think they're on each other's Christmas card list. I think it's fair to say that. Formula One is massively competitive, but the situation with Ocon and Perez in 2017 went beyond the point that I think any of us thought that it would.
You've got to understand the psychology and the dynamics of the team and how that worked. You know, Esteban had to quickly make a name for himself. He was a rookie. Sergio, he had to assert himself as the driver that was with the team the longest.
This is two teammates scrapping away here.
Ocon's going to go for it again, trying to get past Perez, but here comes Vettel in the Ferrari. Up the inside into turn one, Ocon slithers out wide, and the two Force Indias, after fighting each other, have lost a place.
He moved at the last moment. What is this? It's not fair racing at all.
Esteban, did your teammate cost you a chance at your first Formula One podium today?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. But that's racing, you know, and that's not going to take away my smile.
Are you racing for Sergio Perez, or are you racing for Force India?
No, of course I'm racing for my team, you know. I think I just defend the position as I will do to anyone.
The two Force Indias vying for position. Perez gets ahead of Ocon as they come into the left-hand room too, and they make contact. Both damaged. Both damaged.
What did Esteban do, guys? I think he was just over-aggressive. I think what happened today is totally unacceptable for the team.
He says that you gave him no room, says that you squeezed him against a wall, cost the team a potential win today.
That's what he said? Okay. Well, if that's what he said, you know, I'm not going to comment.
Both Sergio and Esteban, they're both looking at their future. So this inter-team rivalry of being top dog at the team becomes all-encompassing.
The two teammates are battling again. Oh, Perez gets past Ocon as they now accelerate towards the fastest part of the circuit. Oh, and the two Force Indians make contact.
Missing a part of his front wing, Ocon there.
Once again, touched.
Guys, what the fuck? What the fuck is this guy doing? Something broken now.
The two Force Indians get too close together, and it is a puncture for Sergio Perez.
Has the relationship between you totally gone now?
I don't know. The thing for sure is that I'm going to go speak to him man to man and tell him the truth, you know. He's going to have a child. I don't know if he wants to die or something.
It seems that you both get locked into some huge battles on track. Is that good for the team?
No, not at all, especially after today. But we have to look back. Remember Baku, you know. He put me there on the wall. I'm not saying that I did it because of that, you know, but tension starts back then, you know.
It got so bad, the team stepped in and stopped them from racing each other. It was as simple as that. They were not allowed to race one another again.
Once they started understanding how important it was for them to work together and not crash into each other, it got better.
It's time for qualifying here in Spa. Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez are used to fighting each other for points, but now they're fighting for a seat. Who can show what they're capable of at one of the most challenging and treacherous tracks in the world?
Rain in the air, it would be. It's Spa.
Worst of the rain, we think, has missed turn 1. It's raining heavy pit lane now.
The difference between driving on the wet and the dry. Every lap, one line can be much quicker than the other one. So you have to adapt every lap, it's different conditions. This is what's fun about it.
Lewis Hamilton going for a record 5th pole position here at Spa.
It's raining a lot down the back here.
The crowd are reaching for the umbrellas already, and it might be that the track is a bit too slippy.
At the speeds these guys are doing, when it starts to rain, your reactions have to be lightning.
Oh shit, Valtteri's gone off.
Valtteri Bottas has slid his way off the track.
Fuck his shit, man. Fuck his shit.
They've got to get on the right line. They've got to spot every braking point. And it's Hamilton with the fastest lap time so far.
That was one tough lap to do.
Sergio Perez looks set to take 4th, an amazing result for Force India, if he can hang on to it.
Checo P4, P4.
Good job, guys.
There are challenges still to come from Esteban Ocon.
When I was a kid, it was a lot of time spent on the rain. And when all the kids were stopping because it was too wet, they were getting wet, I was keeping going even when I had freeze hands where I couldn't move. I was crying after that, but while driving I was not feeling anything. I was pushing to be the best I could.
So Esteban, that is P3.
You're joking, you're joking.
Ocon goes 3rd fastest, his best ever qualifying in Formula 1.
Yes! The rain came down to give Force India one of their greatest ever days.
They're waiting for you on the grid. You need to line up in P3, which is to the left-hand side. It's Hamilton, Vettel, you.
Oh my God.
Esteban Ocon's qualifying performance in Spa was absolutely astonishing. When you think that he qualified above everybody other than Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton, who are these 2 4-time world champions.
Esteban, welcome to the top 3.
Hi everyone, hello. Thanks for the support, Master One.
Well, fairy tale for the team and for Ocon as well. Speculation as to where he might be in a few races' time, let alone next season. And here he is lining up on the 2nd row.
Unfortunately, we're in a weird place in Formula 1 where you've got some teams that, rather than take like a new up-and-coming kid, they'll take whoever's got the money. But he needs to be in a great car because he's one of the top drivers here, so I hope that opportunity is there for him.
So, Force India, what a month it has been. They go into administration, they get rescued, they get taken over. They come to Spa and they lock out the 2nd row.
No driver likes to be beaten by their teammate. They're the first reference, they're in the same car, and that's the person you've got to beat. So someone like Sergio Perez, if he's getting out-qualified by Esteban Ocon, that's going to really hurt, because this is a guy with less experience, but maybe is showing he's got more potential.
We're minutes away from racing here at the Singapore Grand Prix. Since the start of the season, Esteban Ocon has out-qualified his teammate 11 times to 4. So Sergio Perez really needs a good result tonight.
Good start for Esteban Ocon. Two Force Indias together again. They're going wheel to wheel. Into the water goes Esteban Ocon.
I got hit by Sergio badly. Sorry guys, there was no room. I basically did not even see him.
It's Baku from last year, it's Spa from last year, all over again, and it's Ocon who is squeezed into the wall by his teammate.
Esteban's car's in the wall, thanks to Sergio, on the first lap of the race. It's utterly unforgivable.
Esteban, awful to see you back here in the pit lane. What happened?
Well, I think it's clear, and I think everyone came first, so we'll see.
Thanks very much.
I think I'm not going to comment, probably says more than Esteban Ocon really wants to give away.
So one Force India car out of the race. Can Sergio Perez rescue some points for the team?
Checo Sorokin ahead. We will need to overtake him.
Is he going to go for it? Down the inside, maybe? No. Sergio Perez very nearly ran into the back of Sergei Sorokin.
Man, Sorokin is moving so much on the braking. Too much, man.
He's vastly experienced, Martin, but we're starting to see increasing desperation from the Mexican.
This is a joke, really. He really wants me to crash.
Perez's frustration was so evident to see. But is that frustration with Sorokin in the race? Or is it a deeper frustration in him not yet knowing his future?
Sergio Perez finally finds a way past Sergei Sorokin. It's not going to be easy. They're still going through this. They've managed to crash. Perez has got severe damage.
Left rear puncture, box.
I wonder if that was just angry. He was driving angry.
Singapore was, I think, a very visual representation of what's going on in Sergio Perez's head.
I tried to close the door before braking, but obviously he doesn't move at all, and probably I was over-optimistic there.
He looked like a rookie, completely losing his marbles. He needs to be impressing the team and showing that he can be a leader, not that he's going to fall apart when things don't quite look like they're going his way.
A very disappointing night indeed for the Force India team.
We'll have no points for both cars, so it's it's a terrible weekend. Now it is a crucial time. After the last race, I have to score a lot of points. I hope I can finish on a high to get the seat for next year. I don't count time, I don't count hours. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas, New Year, holidays. Because the most important thing in sport is to perform and is to do a great job and to be different than the others. There's nothing else that counts. You push to be the best you can. You know, I've dreamed of this as a kid, pushing every day, waking up with the same target, the same goal. I'm not gonna let anything in between me and the performance.
I'm just gonna work harder, and I think that always pays off.
We're here in Mexico City for the start of the Mexican Grand Prix.
Al final de cuentas, tú logras escuchar todo el apoyo de la gente.
It's a huge race for home favourite Sergio Perez. And there's some big news for his team, Racing Point Force India. After months of speculation, they've announced their driver lineup for next season.
In 2019, we'll have Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez as our two racing car drivers.
Next year, my situation is still, quite blurry. I don't really know what I will be doing. I don't really understand how that has gone from being a dream situation to that situation now.
We saw talent in Sergio, and yes, he came with a backing Carlos Slim, so for us it was an added benefit because funding does correlate highly to performance, and we need all the funding we can get. But first and foremost, he's there because of his talent.
What I don't understand is that other things can be above performance, above motivation, about work. Checo, there's a helicopter from the hotel to the track. But yeah, I'm not at this level yet. But yeah, he's there on the massive side, do you see? He's everywhere. He looks happy. Giving it all my heart to be here, and I'm giving it all I can. But unfortunately, there's other things that comes in play, and that's what I don't really understand, and that's what disappoints me a bit so far.
Are you looking forward to driving with Lance?
It's just the lack of opportunities that this sport offers, We only have 20 seats. It just happens, One day it's gonna be me.
Just listen to the crowd. It's race day here at the Mexican Grand Prix.
Fingers crossed, and I'm sure the whole of Mexico are keeping their fingers crossed for Sergio Perez, who fancies his chances for a really strong points finish in today's race.
I think very few drivers in the world get to experience that amount of support from their countries. It is another pressure. You try to be perfect, and you really work hard, and you really try to focus on your thing.
No love lost between Sergio Perez and his teammate Esteban Ocon. I'm sure Ocon will want to prove what he's made of before he leaves Force India.
To be Checo in Mexico, it's one of your goals here?
Well, my goal is to do the best I can, so yeah, it is.
Esteban Ocon has only got a few races left this season to deliver the results that convinces another team to put him in for 2019. So right now, he's driving for his career.
Rumours certainly starting to circulate that Esteban may be within a chance of that final seat at Williams.
And this is the way it looks. Ricciardo on pole, Verstappen in second, Lewis Hamilton starts third. And Hamilton driving for the Drivers' Championship. If he finishes 7th or higher, he'll become a 5-times world champion. Esteban Ocon starts 11th. Ocon out-qualifying Sergio Perez, who starts 13th.
Sergio Perez, the local hero. There's a man who looks like he's carrying a lot of anticipation, hope and stress.
turn one then. Who's going to come out on top? So far, all getting away cleanly. Esteban Ocon, Hulkenberg going wheel to wheel. And they've done it.
Damage front wing.
You will be pitting, Esteban, you will be pitting. You have half the front wing missing.
And Ocon already into the pits. He's gone from 11th to last in 3 corners.
It's hard at that moment when you go off of the track. Even if the guys are really quick, it's a lot of seconds lost. I knew that I had to catch up and get back in the race.
Nightmare start for Ocon, but he's back out. How far can he climb back up the order?
Checo, your pace is at least as good as the cars behind, if not better.
I think I can be 1 second quicker than you.
At that point in the race, I was focused on trying to achieve the best I possibly could.
Here goes Sergio Perez, running in 11th place. Sergio Perez is having a go. Swoops around the outside. Sergio Perez has got his man, and Mexico stands and applauds. Brilliant moving, brilliant overtaking.
To Esteban, we need to be pushing up to Sorokin as much as possible now.
Ocon in the Force India, running in 16th. A long, long way to go to recover the damage from the opening few laps. Now he's behind Sergei Sorokin in the Williams.
At that moment, I knew I had to push hard.
Ocon might be going for it with Sorokin. He is going for it, you know.
Well done. Currently you're 10 seconds behind Perez.
Perez is having a go. Is he going to try and launch one? He is down the outside. Perez swoops around the outside of Charles Leclerc.
Good job, Checo.
And he is now up into 8th place.
I was doing a great, fantastic race. And I was very lucky to have such a country behind me. But then things changed quickly.
To protect everyone left. I have...
Checo, understood. See if it improves with a bit of brake cooling after you've been behind other cars. Maybe brake cooling helps it a bit.
What is the problem with Sergio Perez? Kevin Magnussen is closing in the Haas behind. Magnussen looks to the outside. Oh, and Perez, a big twitch. He can barely get the car slowed down.
I have no fucking brake, man.
And here comes Esteban Ocon, still in 15th place.
What's going on? Perez has a problem ahead with brakes.
Ocon hunting down his teammate. Sergio Perez losing out to Ericsson and sliding wide again. Surely the race is over for the Mexican. So after a tough start, Ocon in front of his teammate.
Checo, we're going to have to retire. Caution stopping. Look out for the guys. We'll stop you in the pit lane.
Perez has come into the pits. The first time ever Sergio Perez retires from his home Grand Prix. That is just tragic.
It was really hard, you know, really difficult to digest. You work the whole weekend so hard with the team. And yeah, unfortunately, we get that issue. I have all my family, all my people there. My whole country is watching me. And they all want me to do incredible well. It was very tough.
Here comes Hamilton in 4th place at the moment. He will become champion as it stands now.
So Esteban, keep pushing.
There's Esteban Ocon on the Force India. He's really going for it here. This is a great blast towards turn 1.
Ocon looking to the outside of Hartley. Late on the brakes. Wheel to wheel.
And they're in contact. They've gone into each other. A puff of smoke there from the rear of that Toro Rosso. Oh, he passed, no!
Debris all over the track too from the back of the Toro Rosso.
I don't know if I have damage in the front or not. Oh, fucking hell, and nothing is going well in this race.
I think we have some more damage on the car, Esteban.
Copy that, any advice?
We really need to try and catch up the group if we can. So it's head down and let's push. Gasly behind. So watch out, Gasly.
On board now with Pierre Gasly. Is he going to try and launch one? He is down the outside. And they come close, but they don't touch.
Ocon there, fighting for his racing career.
In my head, I was like, focus, to try to be the best you can.
Ocon and Hartley at 220 miles an hour, and Ocon is through. And he's now up into 11th place.
Well done. 3 laps to go.
But all eyes now on Lewis Hamilton. The man from Stevenage has done it once again. A 5-time champion of the world.
Okay, checkered flag. Well done.
And Esteban Ocon crosses the line to finish in 11th place.
The fact that Esteban came home 11th in Mexico, I think tells you everything about the guy. He took contact on the first lap, and yeah, he made contact later on in the race, and many drivers might have retired the car, but he still brought it home. I find it hard to believe that Esteban could end up out of a seat for next season.
My goal always been to be a Formula 1 driver. Dream of this as a kid. And now, I still have no seat for next year. I mean, as a sportsman, first you have to believe in yourself, but it hasn't been easy, for sure. But I hope, people will remember what I did the last 2 years.
Yet, any hope of a quiet return to racing was immediately shattered. Within 24 hours of the announcement, an anonymous email was dispatched to all team principals, senior personnel within the international governing body of motorsport, and hundreds of credentialed journalists. The email contained a digital cache of private WhatsApp messages and photographs purposed to be the Evidence from the investigation. The leak was highly coordinated and deliberately timed to inflict the maximum possible disruption on the team at the exact moment the cars were taking to the track. The paddock was thrown into a frenzy of speculation. The higher a team rises, the sharper the knives of their competitors become, and Horner found himself fighting for his professional life. The internal politics of Red Bull, long hidden behind a facade of relentless winning, began to spill into the public domain. Jos Verstappen, the father of the triple world champion Max Verstappen, publicly broke ranks, telling a British newspaper that the team was at risk of being torn apart if Horner remained in his position. He claimed that the ongoing controversy was creating an untenable level of distraction and division. Max Verstappen found himself positioned in an incredibly awkward professional and personal vice. He owed his career success to the environment Horner had built at Red Bull, yet his loyalty to his father was absolute. When questioned by the media, the young champion attempted to walk a delicate tightrope, defending his father's integrity while expressing a desire for a quiet, stable working environment where the team could focus solely on performance. The drama threatened to transform the most successful sports franchise of the era into a high-speed soap opera, proving that even the most formidable technical dynasties are vulnerable to human frailty and internal conflict. The struggle for redemption in Bahrain. Despite the raging controversy in the hospitality suites, the physical reality of the sport remained unchanged as the 5 red lights went out to signal the start of the Bahrain Grand Prix, the opening race of the 2024 season was a study in contrasts. For Max Verstappen, the weekend was a continuation of his clinical mastery. He secured pole position, led every lap, recorded the fastest lap of the race, and crossed the line to claim a dominant victory, leading home his teammate Sergio Perez for a comfortable Red Bull 1-2 finish. It was a performance that suggested, on the surface at least, that the off-track distractions had done nothing to slow the blue cars down. Behind the leading duo, however, Carlos Sainz was driving with a point to prove. The Spaniard, starting from 4th on the grid, found himself locked in a fierce battle with his teammate Charles Leclerc. Leclerc, who had been secured by Ferrari on a long-term contract, was widely viewed as the golden boy of the Scuderia. But on this night, Sainz was unwilling to play the supporting role. He drove with a controlled fury, executing a series of aggressive overtakes on Leclerc, including one where the 2 cars almost touched wheels entering the first corner. Sainz claimed the final spot on the podium, crossing the line in 3rd place. It was a highly symbolic result. The driver, who had been dismissed by the team, was the one standing on the podium, presenting a physical reminder of his value too.
And observing team bosses.
For Sainz, the result was a relief and a justification of his approach. He had begun his final season with Ferrari by making a definitive statement. He was not there to facilitate the transition to the Hamilton era. He was there to win for himself. For Mercedes, the race was a difficult and frustrating evening. George Russell had started strongly, but his car soon began to suffer from thermal management issues, forcing him to manage his engine temperatures and drop back through the field. Lewis Hamilton, starting from ninth, was unable to make significant progress, ultimately finishing a lonely seventh. The gap to Red Bull remained immense, and the realization that Mercedes faced another long, uphill battle hung heavily over their garage. Toto Wolff watched his cars cross the line with a grim expression, knowing that the task of rebuilding his team's performance was compounded by the need to find a world-class successor for the departing Hamilton. The apotheosis of pain. The unpredictable nature of Formula One was illustrated with brutal clarity just 2 weeks later, as the paddock arrived in Jeddah for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz began to feel unwell. He struggled through the Thursday practice sessions, his face pale and his body clearly showing the strain of piloting a high downforce car at over 300 kilometers per hour while in severe physical discomfort. On Friday morning, the diagnosis was confirmed. Sainz was suffering from acute appendicitis and required immediate emergency surgery. He was ruled out of the weekend, his seat taken by the promising young reserve driver Oliver Bearman. The surgery was successful, but the physical toll on an elite athlete was significant. Abdominal surgery of any kind disrupts the core muscle groups that are essential for controlling a modern Formula One car, which subjects a driver to lateral forces exceeding 5 times their own body weight through high-speed corners. With the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne scheduled just 16 days later, the consensus in the paddock was that Sainz would be unable to return in time. Many expected him to target the Japanese Grand Prix in April for his comeback, allowing his body the necessary time to heal. But Sainz understood the harsh, short-term memory of the sport. Every race he missed was an opportunity for another driver to capture the attention of the team principals. He could not afford to let himself be forgotten. Sainz arrived in Melbourne looking thin and visibly drained. He admitted to the media that his preparation had been entirely compromised during the first week. Post-surgery, he had been confined to his bed, unable to walk or use his abdominal muscles. His training had been replaced by physical therapy and hyperbaric chamber sessions designed to accelerate tissue repair. He confessed that he still could not cough or sneeze without experiencing sharp pain, and the prospect of strapping himself into the carbon fiber monocoque of the Ferrari was the most intimidating challenge of his professional life. Yet, when he took to the Albert Park circuit for Friday practice, the stopwatch told a different story. Sainz adjusted his driving style to minimize the physical strain, relying on his precise placement of the car and his innate feel for the limit of adhesion. He steadily built his confidence, ultimately qualifying on the front row of the grid, second only to the formidable Max Verstappen. The race on Sunday would enter the lore of the sport.
On the second lap,
Verstappen began to experience a mechanical issue, his rear right brake caliper sticking and causing a plume of white smoke to emerge from the wheel well. The Dutchman was forced to slow down, and Sainz seized his opportunity immediately. He swept past the Red Bull into the lead before Verstappen was forced to crawl back to the pit lane and retire his car in a dramatic burst of fire. Sainz was left in clean air, but the physical challenge of completing 58 laps around the bumpy, high-speed Melbourne circuit was immense. Every curb strike sent a jolt through his healing abdomen, and his muscles began to fatigue rapidly in the closing stages. He focused entirely on his breathing and his rhythm, refusing to let his mind dwell on the physical discomfort. He crossed the line to claim a sensational victory, leading home Charles Leclerc. For a Ferrari 1-2 finish, it was a triumph of pure human will over physical limitation. As he stood on the top step of the podium, his face etched with exhaustion but illuminated by joy, the paddock recognized that Sainz had delivered one of the most remarkable performances in modern sporting history. He had proved, beyond any shadow of doubt, that he possessed the mental resilience of a true champion. For the midfield teams looking to secure his services for 2025, his price had just risen significantly. The burden of the underdog. While Carlos Sainz was demonstrating the power of resilience in Melbourne, another drama was unfolding around Lando Norris and the McLaren team. Norris, a driver of immense natural talent and charismatic appeal, had become a central figure in the sport's new generation. He had entered Formula One as a teenager, capturing the affection of fans with his self-deprecating humor and his close, friendly relationship with his peers, most notably Max Verstappen. Yet, underneath the easygoing exterior lay a complex and deeply self-critical psychological landscape. Norris had accumulated an impressive number of podium finishes, but the top step of the podium had remained frustratingly out of reach. The digital community had begun to refer to him as Lando No Wins, a nickname that, despite his public dismissals, had begun to fester in his subconscious. Norris admitted that his greatest weakness was his tendency to care too deeply about the opinions and criticisms of others. When a race victory slipped through his fingers, often due to minor execution errors or tactical misjudgments under high pressure, he would descend into a spiral of intense self-reproach. He understood that in the upper echelons of the sport, talent was only a prerequisite. To challenge a driver like Max Verstappen, who possessed an uncompromising, ruthless approach to racing, Norris needed to cultivate a psychological edge that he had previously lacked. The contrast between Verstappen and Norris was not merely one of driving style, but of upbringing and competitive philosophy. Verstappen had been raised in the intense, uncompromising environment of professional karting under the strict, often harsh guidance of his father, Jos. From a young age, Max had been conditioned to view anything other than absolute victory as a failure. He had arrived in Formula One with a fully formed, aggressive competitive edge, completely indifferent to the opinions of his competitors or the public. Norris, by his own admission, had grown up as a quieter, more sensitive individual who was occasionally vulnerable to being intimidated on the track. He had to learn how to be ruthless, how to prioritize his own success over his friendships, and how to shut out the persistent noise of the media paddock if he was ever to fulfill his potential as a world champion. The sunrise in Miami. The opportunity for Norris to redefine his career arrived at the Miami International Autodrome in May. The Florida venue, constructed around the Hard Rock Stadium, was a high-speed, high-temperature challenge that had previously been dominated by Max Verstappen. McLaren arrived at the event having introduced an extensive package of aerodynamic upgrades to Norris's car, representing their best chance of the season to challenge the supremacy of the Red Bull. The build-up to the weekend had been compromised for Norris by a bizarre incident during a brief trip to Amsterdam, where he had sustained a minor cut to his nose from a piece of broken glass during a celebration with friends. The media had immediately jumped on the incident, suggesting that Norris possessed a party boy reputation that was incompatible with the intense focus required of a modern Formula One driver. Zak Brown, the chief executive of McLaren, was quick to manage the narrative. But he understood that there were no longer any excuses for his star driver. The car was capable of winning. Norris needed to deliver. The race on Sunday began with the familiar sight of Max Verstappen leading from pole position. Norris, starting from fifth, managed his tires carefully during the opening stint, showing impressive pace on the medium compound. The turning point of the Grand Prix occurred on lap 28, when a collision between Kevin Magnussen and Logan Sargent brought out the safety car. The timing was perfect for Norris, who had not yet made his mandatory pit stop. He was able to enter the pit lane under the neutralized conditions, change his tires, and emerge back onto the track as the race leader, ahead of Verstappen. It was a stroke of good fortune, but the real test lay in the restart. Norris found himself leading the field with the triple world champion positioned directly in his mirrors. In the past, this was the exact scenario where the pressure might have got to him, where the fear of making a mistake would have compromised his performance. As the safety car returned to the pits, Verstappen launched an immediate attack, pulling alongside the McLaren into the first corner. Norris held his nerve, placing his car with absolute precision and maintaining the lead. From that moment on, the race was a demonstration of supreme control. Norris systematically pulled away from the Red Bull, utilizing the performance of his upgraded McLaren to build a gap of over 7 seconds. When he crossed the line to claim his first Formula One victory, the release of tension was immense. The radio transmission was a mixture of tears and triumphant relief. Lando no wins was no more. The victory was celebrated not just by McLaren but by almost the entire paddock, with rivals like Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso offering genuine congratulations to a driver who had finally broken through his psychological barrier. For Norris, the win in Miami was a transformative experience. He walked taller, spoke with greater authority, and began to view himself not as an aspiring contender, but as a peer of Max Verstappen. The triumph had given him a taste of success, and like all great competitors, he found that victory was an incredibly addictive drug. He returned to Europe with a single-minded focus. He wanted to experience that feeling again, even if it meant destroying his friendship with the man who had dominated the sport for 3 years. The collision of dreams. The inevitable escalation of the rivalry between Norris and Verstappen occurred during the European leg of the season, reaching a dramatic climax at the Austrian Grand Prix. The Red Bull Ring, nestled in the Styrian Mountains, was Verstappen's home circuit, packed with thousands of passionate Dutch supporters, dressed in orange. During the closing stages of the race, Norris found himself on fresher tires, rapidly closing the gap to Verstappen, who was struggling with the balance of his Red Bull. The battle for the lead became an intense, multi-lap duel that showcased the contrasting philosophies of the two competitors. Norris launched a series of aggressive moves into Turn 3 and Turn 4, utilizing his DRS advantage to pull alongside the Red Bull. Verstappen, defending with his characteristic intransigence, repeatedly positioned his car in the middle of the track, prompting Norris to complain bitterly over the team radio that the Dutchman was moving under braking, a direct violation of the sporting code. The tension was palpable. The two drivers were no longer playing the role of friendly peers. They were two fierce competitors fighting for the same piece of asphalt, completely indifferent to their personal relationship off the track.
On
lap 64, the boiling point was reached. Norris attempted a move around the outside of Turn 3. Verstappen squeezed him toward the edge of the track, and the two cars made contact, their rear tires touching and causing immediate, catastrophic punctures to both machines. The collision was a disaster for both. Norris's McLaren suffered extensive damage as he attempted to limp back to the pits, ultimately forcing him to retire the car in a state of absolute fury. Verstappen managed to survive the puncture, replace his wheel, and cross the line in 5th place, but the damage to his reputation and his relationship with Norris was significant. In the media pen after the race, the emotional fallout was clear. Norris, his voice shaking with disappointment, stated that if Verstappen refused to apologize or acknowledge that his defensive maneuvers had been dangerous, he would lose a significant amount of respect for him. He felt that his friend had let him down, prioritizing an aggressive defense over mutual respect. Verstappen, when questioned, was entirely unrepentant. He argued that he had not been overly aggressive and that the collision was simply a consequence of hard, close racing at the limit. He made it clear that he was not in the sport to be loved or to maintain friendships. He was there to win championships.
The
incident served as a stark reminder of the absolute ruthlessness required to remain at the top of the sport, and it marked the definitive end of the comfortable, friendly dynamic that had previously existed between the two young
stars.
The search for succession at Mercedes. While the battle for the championship was growing increasingly volatile, Toto Wolff was quietly managing a critical transition within his own organization. The departure of Lewis Hamilton had created a vacuum at Mercedes that was not merely technical but cultural. Hamilton had been the emotional anchor of the team for over a decade, and replacing him was a task that Wolff recognized as almost impossible. The immediate question was whether George Russell was ready to assume the mantle of undisputed team leader. Russell had arrived at Mercedes in 2022, having spent 3 years proving his worth at Williams.
He possessed
immense raw speed and a meticulous, analytical approach to his racing, famously presenting a PowerPoint presentation to Wolff as a teenager to outline why he should be signed to the Mercedes Junior program. Yet, despite his undeniable talent, Russell's tenure at Mercedes had been marked by occasional, high-profile errors at critical moments. He had hit the wall on the final lap in Singapore while chasing victory, and had suffered a series of costly collisions and tactical misjudgments that had led some in the paddock to question whether he possessed the psychological calm required to perform consistently at the absolute peak of the sport. The British Grand Prix at Silverstone in July presented Russell with the perfect opportunity to quiet his critics and establish his credentials as Hamilton's natural heir. In front of a massive, patriotic home crowd, Mercedes delivered a stunning performance in qualifying, securing a front-row lockout with Russell on pole position and Hamilton alongside him in second. The race on Sunday was held under typical British summer conditions, with dark clouds threatening rain and creating a highly complex, rapidly changing track surface. Russell led cleanly from the start, demonstrating impressive composure as he managed the gap to his teammate. But as the rain began to fall, the strategic decisions became incredibly difficult. The crossover point, the exact moment to transition from slick tires to intermediates, is one of the most intellectually demanding challenges a driver and their engineering team can face. In these treacherous conditions, the great drivers rely on a combination of raw feel and absolute confidence. As the track grew increasingly slick, Hamilton began to close the gap to Russell, utilizing his vast experience to find grip where none seemed to exist. The older champion swept past his younger teammate into the lead, showcasing a level of mastery that Russell was unable to match. Shortly after, Russell's race was brought to a premature end by a suspected water system failure, forcing him to retire the car in the pits. He watched from the garage as Lewis Hamilton drove a masterclass of a race to claim an emotional, historic victory, his first win since 2021 and his final home triumph for Mercedes. The scene at Silverstone was one of immense emotion, but for George Russell it was a bitter pill to swallow. He had started from pole, in front of his home fans, with the opportunity to prove he was the future of the team, only to watch his departing teammate claim the glory. He understood that to be the leader Toto Wolff required, he needed to stamp out the minor inconsistencies and unfortunate breaks that had characterized his season. He needed a weekend of flawless Execution. Redemption at SBA Francorchamps. That opportunity arrived just 3 weeks later at the legendary Spa-Francorchamps circuit for the Belgian Grand Prix, the high-speed undulating track in the Ardennes forest is one of the most physically and technically demanding venues on the calendar, a place where a driver's courage and strategic intelligence are tested to the absolute limit. Russell started from 6th on the grid, with Charles Leclerc on pole and Lewis Hamilton in 3rd. At the start, Hamilton made a brilliant move to take the lead, and for much of the afternoon, it appeared that the 7-time champion was on track to claim another comfortable victory. But Russell was executing a completely different plan as the race progressed, and the tire degradation proved to be lower than the engineers had originally predicted. Russell began to contemplate a massive strategic gamble, while the rest of the field, including Hamilton, committed to a standard 2-stop strategy. Russell asked his engineer if it would be possible to stay out and complete the race on a single stop, running his hard compound tires to the very end of the Grand Prix. It was an incredibly bold proposal. It required Russell to complete 34 laps on a single set of tires, managing his pace to prevent the rubber from dropping off a performance cliff while defending against a rapidly closing Hamilton on much fresher tires. Toto Wolff and the Mercedes engineering team watched the telemetry with a mixture of anxiety and awe. Russell was taking the reins of his own destiny, overriding the standard simulations to make a definitive on-track decision. In the closing laps, Hamilton closed to within less than a second of his teammate, utilizing his DRS advantage down the Kemmel Straight to mount a furious attack. Russell defended with absolute precision. He placed his Mercedes exactly where it needed to be, utilizing his exit speed out of the law source hairpin to protect his lead. He crossed the line to claim an astonishing victory, a tactical masterstroke that was entirely of his own making. Although a post-race technical inspection would ultimately reveal that Russell's car was 1.5 kilograms underweight, likely due to the extreme wear on his single set of tires, which led to his disqualification, the performance had served its political purpose. Russell had demonstrated to Toto Wolff and the entire paddock that he possessed the strategic maturity, the defensive capability, and the absolute bravery required to lead Mercedes into the post-Hamilton era. He had taken the baton, not by having it passed to him, but by wrenching it away on the racetrack. The prodigy. With Russell's position as team leader established, Toto Wolff turned his attention to the empty seat alongside him. Rather than selecting an experienced midfield driver, Wolff decided to take one of the most calculated and audacious risks in the modern history of the sport. He chose to promote Andrea Kimi Antonelli, a 17-year-old Italian driver who is currently competing in his rookie season of the Formula 2 Championship. Antonelli had been a member of the Mercedes junior team since he was a child, and his progression through the junior categories had been nothing short of legendary. He had won every single championship he had participated in. demonstrating a level of natural speed and car control that had drawn immediate comparisons to the early careers of Max Verstappen and Ayrton Senna. Wolff was completely enamored with the young Italian's potential. He recognized that promoting an 18-year-old directly into a Mercedes seat was a massive risk, one that would expose the teenager to an unprecedented level of media scrutiny and pressure. But Wolff was also mindful of the past. He had missed the opportunity to sign a young Max Verstappen years earlier, and he was determined not to make the same mistake twice. During the summer, Wolff organized a private test for Antonelli in an older Mercedes Formula One car. The team watched in awe as the young Italian adjusted immediately to the high power and complex systems of the hybrid machine, recording lap times that confirmed his exceptional talent. Wolff met with Antonelli and his father, breaking the news that the seat was his. For 2025, the announcement was made public at Monza in front of Antonelli's home crowd, signaling a bold commitment to youth and a belief that the combination of George Russell's experience and Antonelli's raw, uncorrupted speed would form the foundation of Mercedes' next championship winning dynasty. The battle for the outcast. While Mercedes was securing its future, Carlos Sainz was navigating a highly complex corporate chess game of his own. His victory in Melbourne had established him as the most desirable free agent on the market, but the avenues to a seat at a top 3 team had quickly closed. Red Bull had decided to retain Sergio Perez, prioritizing internal stability around Max Verstappen, while Mercedes had committed to their youth program with Antonelli. Sainz was left to evaluate 3 distinct proposals from midfield organizations, each representing a completely different path for his professional career. The first offer came from the stake Formula One team, which was preparing for a historic transition into the official Audi factory team in 2026. Alessandro Alunni Bravi, the team representative, presented a highly sophisticated corporate pitch. Audi was one of the most successful and prestigious automotive brands in the world, with a legacy of winning in every motorsport discipline they had ever entered, from World Rally to the legendary 24 Hours of Le Mans. The family connection was also incredibly strong. Sainz's father, Carlos Sainz Sr., had recently won the Dakar Rally piloting an Audi machine, and the German manufacturer was highly keen to secure the younger Sainz as the face of their entry into Formula One. But the reality of the team's current performance was deeply discouraging. Operating under the Sauber banner, the team was struggling at the very back of the grid in 2024, beset by mechanical reliability issues and highly slow pit stops caused by a fundamental design flaw in their wheel hubs. Sainz knew that if he chose Audi, he would have to sacrifice the 2025 season entirely, with no guarantee that the team's technical department could deliver a competitive engine and chassis when the new regulations arrived in 2026. The second option was Williams Racing, led by the charismatic and highly respected James Vowles. Williams was an organization with a legacy that few other teams could match, having claimed 7 driver championships and 9 constructors' titles during their golden era in the late 20th century. But the modern reality of the team was one of severe decline. They had spent much of the previous decade operating with limited resources, relying on outdated infrastructure and struggling to stay off the bottom of the standings. Vowles, who had spent years as the chief strategist at Mercedes during their dominant era, had been brought in to execute a complete cultural and technical transformation of the British team. He was remarkably honest with Sainz during their meetings. He did not attempt to hide the team's current weaknesses, admitting that they had been forced to carry excess weight in their chassis and that their production facilities were still being modernized. Instead, Vowles sold Sainz on the future. He outlined a clear, highly structured plan backed by significant capital investment from their owners, Dorilton Capital. He argued that Sainz, alongside the highly respected Alex Albon, would form the strongest driver lineup in the midfield, a pairing capable of driving the entire organization back to the front of the grid. For Vowles, securing Sainz was not merely a driver signing, it was a public declaration of intent, a statement to the world that Williams was serious about reclaiming its position as a championship-winning force. The third and most volatile option arrived late in the summer from the French squad, Alpine. The team had experienced a highly difficult and chaotic 2024 campaign, struggling near the back of the grid and suffering from a series of management changes. In a dramatic bid to restructure the organization, the Renault leadership had appointed Flavio Briatore as an executive advisor. Briatore was a legendary and highly controversial figure in the paddock. He had guided Benetton to world championships with Michael Schumacher in the 1990s and had repeated the feat with Fernando Alonso at Renault in the mid-thousands. He was a competitive animal, a man who operated with an absolute disregard for conventional diplomacy and who possessed a reputation for getting things done by any means necessary. Briatore immediately targeted Sainz, using his formidable powers of persuasion and his long-standing relationship with the Sainz family to mount an aggressive campaign. He argued that Alpine, despite their current struggles, possessed a fully functioning factory infrastructure that could deliver immediate results far more effectively than a rebuilding project like Williams. The slut of the paddock. Sainz found himself in a state of agonizing indecision. The pressure from the teams was relentless, and the entire driver market had effectively ground to a halt as every other midfield competitor waited for the Spaniard to make his move. His peers on the grid began to refer to him with a mixture of amusement and frustration as the paddock slut, the driver who is flirting with every team boss but refusing to commit to a relationship. Sainz knew that the decision was the most critical of his professional life. If he selected the wrong team, he was at risk of descending into midfield obscurity, of never again standing on a Formula One podium or having the opportunity to spray the champagne of victory. He analyzed the options in exhaustive detail with his manager and cousin, Carlos.
Honorel.
They met with Aluni Bravi, they had late-night dinners with Vowles, and they listened to the confident, high-stakes assurances of Briatore. By late summer, the consensus in the paddock was that Sainz had committed to Williams, but the arrival of Briatore at Alpine had thrown a wrench into the works, prompting Sainz to delay his signature and causing immense anxiety for James Vowles, who had spent 6 months constructing a contract and preparing the ground for the Spaniard's arrival. Vowles grew increasingly nervous as the delays continued, knowing that in this sport, a deal is never truly done until the ink is dry on the paper. The storm at Zandvoort. While Sainz was agonizing over his contract, the championship battle resumed at Zandvoort for the Dutch Grand Prix. The event was a massive celebration of Max Verstappen, with over 100,000 Dutch fans creating an amphitheater of orange smoke and relentless noise along the North Sea coast. Since the race had returned to the calendar, Verstappen had been completely undefeated on his home soil, and his supporters arrived expecting another demonstration of his absolute supremacy. But the technical balance of power had shifted. McLaren had continued to refine their package, and Lando Norris arrived at Zandvoort with a car that was now widely recognized as the fastest machine in the sport. During Saturday qualifying, Norris delivered a stunning lap to claim pole position, beating Verstappen by over 0.3 of a second. The pressure on the young British driver was immense. He knew that the eyes of the entire world were on him, ready to judge him and tear him down if he made a mistake under the intense glare of Verstappen's home crowd. When the red lights went out on Sunday, those fears appeared to be realized. Norris suffered a poor start, his rear wheels spinning on the dusty side of the track and allowing Verstappen to sweep into the lead before the first corner. The orange grandstands erupted in a deafening roar of triumph. In the past, this was the exact moment where Norris might have succumbed to the pressure, where the disappointment of a lost start would have compromised his entire afternoon. But the victory in Miami and the fierce battles of the summer had forged a new psychological resilience within him. He did not panic. He settled into a relentless rhythm, managing his tires and gradually closing the gap to the leading Red Bull. On lap 18, Norris launched a brilliant, controlled attack. He utilized his superior pace to close to within DRS range, pulled alongside Verstappen down the main straight, and swept into the lead into turn 1. The Dutch crowd was silenced. From that moment on, the race was a demonstration of absolute, crushing dominance. Norris systematically pulled away from the triple world champion, turning Verstappen's home race into his own personal exhibition. He crossed the line to claim his second Formula One victory with a massive margin of over 19 seconds, the most dominant win by any competitor of the season. It was a performance that sent a shudder through the Red Bull garage. Verstappen, who had dominated the sport for 3 years, had been thoroughly beaten on his own track. The hunter had become the hunted, and the realization that McLaren was now capable of challenging for both the constructors and the drivers' championships was impossible to ignore. Norris had proved that he was no longer a sensitive underdog. He was a ruthless, world-class competitor who was ready to fight for the ultimate prize. The decision. The momentum generated by McLaren's performance served as a final, decisive catalyst for Carlos Sainz. He looked at the long-term stability of the teams on his table and concluded that the vision presented by James Vowles at Williams offered the most genuine and honorable path for his future. He respected the transparency Vowles had shown throughout their discussions, and he was excited by the prospect of playing a central, heroic role in the restoration of one of the sport's most legendary organizations. Sainz signed a multi-year contract with Williams Racing, committing himself to the project for 2025 and beyond. It was a momentous signing for Williams, a coup that instantly transformed their standing in the paddock and demonstrated to the world that they were serious about reclaiming their position at the front of the grid. For Sainz, the signing was a relief and a new beginning. He had survived the shock of his dismissal from Ferrari. He had conquered the physical agony of appendicitis to win in Melbourne, and he had navigated the complex, treacherous waters of the transfer market to secure a secure, ambitious home for his future. The 2024 season had begun as a narrative of absolute Red Bull dominance, but as the autumn arrived, the landscape of the sport had been completely rewritten. The old hierarchies had been shattered, replaced by a dynamic, multi-team battle that promised to deliver the wildest and most unpredictable era in the history of Formula One. In this high-speed arena where dynasties rose and fell on the merits of a single tenth of a second, the competitors had proved that the only constant was the relentless, uncompromising pursuit of victory. The sun rose over the tarmac of the desert, casting long, sharp shadows across a landscape of carbon fiber, steel, and unyielding ambition. In the paddock of Formula One, time is not measured merely in hours or days, but in the precise, cruel increments of thousandths of a second. It is an arena of supreme technological marvels and profound human vulnerability, where careers are forged in the heat of competition and dismantled in the space of a single afternoon. The year 2023 had belonged entirely to one force, Red Bull. Racing had achieved a level of dominance that the sport had rarely, if ever, witnessed in its long and storied history. To look at the statistics was to gaze upon a monument of sporting perfection. 21 out of 22 races had fallen to the reigning champions, breaking records for the most victories in a single season, the most podium finishes, the most pole positions converted to wins, and the largest winning margin ever recorded in the history of the sport. It was a display of mechanical and athletic superiority that left rivals bewildered and spectators in awe. Yet, within the quiet offices and pristine motorhomes of the paddock, a different reality was taking shape. Beneath the veneer of celebration, the wheels of a chaotic and unpredictable future were already beginning to turn.
The
truth of this world is that one never truly knows what the next turn will bring. The competition is ruthless, a relentless cycle of survival where yesterday's triumph is merely the baseline for tomorrow's expectation. Over half of the drivers on the starting grid were entering the final year of their contracts, with no guaranteed seats for the year 2025. For many, the coming season would not just be a quest for glory, but an intense, high-stakes audition for their very survival in the sport. The silence of the winter break was shattered in early February by an announcement that sent shockwaves through the global sporting community.
It was
a piece of news so seismic, so unexpected, that it instantly redefined the landscape of Formula One. Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, a man whose name had become synonymous with Mercedes-AMG Petronas after 12 years of historic partnership, had decided to leave the team. In the year 2025, the legendary British driver would wear the iconic red suit of Scuderia Ferrari. For Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team principal, the revelation was surreal. He had shared the longest and most successful team driver relationship in the history of the sport, with Hamilton securing 8 consecutive constructors' championships together. To hear his star driver, a man he considered family, declare his departure was a moment of profound personal and professional reckoning. The timing was particularly brutal, occurring before the new cars had even turned a wheel on the track. It signaled a long, challenging transition of 24 races, a prolonged farewell that would test the resolve and unity of the entire Mercedes organization. In the opposing camp, the decision brought immediate consequence for Carlos Sainz, the young Spanish driver who had been the only non-Red Bull competitor to secure a victory in the year 2023 with his brilliant performance in Singapore, found himself cast aside to make room for the arriving champion. It was a deeply personal blow. Sainz had dedicated his efforts to helping Ferrari rebuild, proving his worth as a world-class competitor alongside his teammate Charles Leclerc. To be released before the season had even commenced was a harsh reminder of the sport's unsentimental nature. Sainz was left with a clear, singular objective: to use every single Grand Prix of the coming year as a platform to prove his value to the rest of the grid. As the paddock gathered in Bahrain for pre-season testing and the opening round of the championship, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The whispers of the rumor mill were louder than ever, but they were soon eclipsed by a corporate storm within the reigning champions camp. Christian Horner, the long-standing and highly successful principal of Red Bull Racing, found himself at the center of an independent investigation following allegations of inappropriate behavior made by a female colleague. The media focus was intense. Horner, the public face of an organization that had just achieved unprecedented athletic heights, had to navigate a barrage of questions regarding his future and his conduct. he maintained a steadfast denial of all accusations, continuing his duties in the paddock while the legal processes unfolded in the background. The situation threatened to create deep divisions within a team that required absolute unity to maintain its competitive
edge.
Rivals watched closely, sensing a potential fracture in the armor of the dominant champions. Amidst this external noise, the green light illuminated at the end of the pit lane, and the 2024 season officially began. The first practice sessions under the floodlights of Bahrain offered a glimpse into the updated pecking order, while Max Verstappen and Red Bull remained the benchmark. The chasing pack had made noticeable strides. Mercedes showed glimpses of consistent speed, while Ferrari looked determined to challenge the front-runners. During the second practice session, another development occurred: a vast cache of alleged messages and photographs purportedly connected to the investigation into Horner was anonymously leaked to the media and team principals. The leak was clearly timed to inflict maximum disruption on the team as they prepared for the first race of the year. Horner remained defiant, refusing to comment on the anonymous materials and emphasizing his focus on the racing ahead. The higher an individual rises in this sport, the sharper the knives become, and Horner was facing the most significant challenge of his career. When the 5 red lights went out to signal the start of the Bahrain Grand Prix, the focus shifted back to the track. Max Verstappen put on a clinical display, escaping from the line and building an insurmountable lead to claim victory, securing a perfect start for his championship defense. Behind him, Carlos Sainz drove with a fierce, quiet determination. Starting from the third row, the Spaniard executed a brilliant, aggressive race. He engaged in a close wheel-to-wheel battle with his teammate Leclerc, forcing his way past. With decisive maneuvers, Sainz crossed the finish line in third place, claiming a hard-earned podium and sending a clear message to the paddock. He was not going to let his impending departure from Ferrari diminish his competitive spirit. It was the perfect start to his campaign of self-redemption. In contrast, Mercedes endured a frustrating afternoon. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton struggled with technical issues, with Hamilton finishing a quiet 7th. The performance fell far below the team's expectations, highlighting the immense work required to close the gap to the front of the field. The relentless nature of the calendar offered no time for reflection. The paddock moved swiftly to Saudi Arabia for the second round of the championship. It was here that Carlos Sainz faced an unexpected and severe physical setback. Ahead of the practice sessions, the Spanish driver was diagnosed with acute appendicitis, requiring immediate emergency surgery. The medical emergency forced him to withdraw from the race weekend, leaving his participation in the subsequent rounds in serious doubt. While Sainz watched from a hospital bed, Max Verstappen claimed another dominant victory on the high-speed streets of Jeddah. But the focus of the paddock was already shifting toward the third round in Melbourne, Australia. Just 16 days after undergoing major abdominal surgery, Carlos Sainz arrived In the Melbourne paddock, the physical toll was evident. He walked with caution, unable to sneeze or cough without discomfort. Many questioned the wisdom of such a rapid return, suggesting that he was rushing back too soon. But in the highly competitive world of Formula One, memory is short, and Sainz knew he could not afford to remain on the sidelines. The Australian Grand Prix weekend delivered a race of dramatic twists.
In the
opening laps, a plume of blue smoke began to billow from the rear of Max Verstappen's Red Bull. A stuck rear brake caliper had caused a fire, forcing the reigning world champion into a rare and spectacular retirement. With the dominant leader out of the equation, the door was flung wide open. Carlos Sainz, showing remarkable resilience and strength, seized the opportunity. He overtook the remaining frontrunners and controlled the pace of the Grand Prix with surgical precision, supported by Leclerc, who finished second. Sainz crossed the line to claim an extraordinary victory for Ferrari. It was a performance of immense psychological and athletic significance. Just over 2 weeks after lying on an operating table, Sainz had delivered the race of his life, proving beyond doubt his caliber as a top-tier driver. As he celebrated on the podium, the paddock recognized the incredible story of determination that had unfolded. The race to secure Sainz's services for the year 2025 had officially begun in earnest. While Sainz navigated his survival campaign, another compelling narrative was unfolding further down the pit lane. Lando Norris, the highly talented young British driver for McLaren, was entering a pivotal phase of his career. Having entered the sport with immense promise, Norris had secured numerous podium finishes, but had yet to claim his maiden Grand Prix victory. The lack of a win had begun to weigh heavily on Norris. In the digital age, critics had labeled him with the nickname of Lando No Wins, a moniker that, while harsh, was starting to influence his own psychological outlook. Norris was a driver who cared deeply about the perceptions of others, a trait that had sometimes led him into spirals of self-doubt. McLaren had made significant developmental strides under the leadership of Andrea Stella and Zak Brown. The car was now a genuine contender at the front of the grid, leaving Norris with no excuses. If he wanted to challenge his close friend and reigning champion, Max Verstappen, he needed to develop a ruthless, uncompromising edge. The opportunity arrived under the bright sunshine of the Miami Grand Prix. Verstappen had dominated the opening sessions of the weekend, maintaining his flawless record around the challenging Florida circuit. But the race itself would present a different scenario. During the middle stages of the Grand Prix, a heavy collision between Kevin Magnussen and Logan Sargent triggered a safety car period. The timing was highly advantageous for Lando Norris, who had yet to make his mandatory pit stop. The young Briton was able to enter the pit lane and emerge back onto the track as the leader of the race, ahead of Verstappen. As the safety car prepared to return to the pit lane, the pressure on Norris was immense. In his mirrors, the formidable silhouette of the Red Bull loomed large. Norris knew that this was his moment. He had to banish the doubts and the memory of past opportunities lost. When the race resumed, Norris executed a flawless restart, keeping Verstappen at bay through the opening corners. Finding his rhythm in the updated McLaren, Norris began to pull away, extending his lead with every lap. He crossed the finish line to claim his first ever Formula One victory, unleashing a wave of emotion and relief within the team and across the grandstands. The victory transformed Norris. He walked taller in the paddock, his confidence visibly elevated. The tag of Lando no-wins was gone, replaced by the status of a Grand Prix winner. But with that success came a new level of expectation and a shift in his relationship with Verstappen. In the subsequent races in Imola and Spain, the two competitors found themselves in close battles. Verstappen claimed narrow victories, but McLaren's pace was undeniably strong. The competitive tension between the two friends was beginning to rise, setting the stage for an explosive encounter at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. The Austrian Grand Prix was a high-stakes duel from the opening lap. Verstappen had led from pole position, but a slow pit stop allowed Norris to close the gap, placing the McLaren directly on the tail of the Red Bull. What followed was an intense, frantic battle for the lead. Norris launched a series of lunges into turn 3, utilizing his fresh tires to pressure the champion. Verstappen, renowned for his uncompromising defensive driving, resisted with every ounce of his skill. The maneuvers walked the very edge of the regulations, with Norris complaining over the radio that Verstappen was moving under braking. With only a few laps remaining, the tension broke as Norris attempted to pass. On the outside of turn 3, the two cars made contact. The impact punctured the tires of both vehicles, forcing Norris into retirement and dropping Verstappen down the order. The collision was a defining moment. In the media pen, a frustrated Norris expressed his disappointment, suggesting that if Verstappen refused to acknowledge his mistake, it would damage the mutual respect they shared. Verstappen remained characteristically unrepentant, asserting that he had not been overly aggressive. The friendship that had existed off the track had collided with the relentless reality of a world championship battle. In Formula One, when the helmet visor goes down, personal relationships are secondary to the pursuit of victory. The narrative returned to Mercedes, where Toto Wolff was searching for a replacement for Lewis Hamilton. The departure of the 7-time champion left a massive void in the team, and Wolff faced a critical decision that would shape the future of the Silver Arrows. George Russell had joined Mercedes with the expectation of eventually succeeding Hamilton as the team leader. However, Russell's tenure had been marked by occasional errors at high-pressure moments, leading some observers to question whether he was ready to shoulder the responsibility of leading a top-tier team. Silverstone, the home of British motorsport, offered Russell the perfect opportunity to assert his authority. In a sensational qualifying session, Mercedes secured a front-row lockout, with Russell claiming pole position ahead of Hamilton. The race began under menacing gray skies, with rain quickly complicating the strategy. Russell led the opening phase, but as the track conditions fluctuated between wet and dry, the challenges intensified. Hamilton's experience shone through in the changing conditions, and he began to pressure his younger teammate. Disaster struck for Russell on lap 34. A suspected water system issue forced the team to retire his car, ending his hopes of a home victory. Hamilton went on to claim an emotional and historic win, his first since the year 2021, sending the British crowd into raptures. For Russell, the retirement was a bitter blow, but the young driver knew that he could not allow the disappointment to linger. He needed to show the resilience and tactical intelligence of a true leader. That opportunity arrived at the legendary Spa-Francorchamps circuit for the Belgian Grand Prix. Starting from 6th on the grid, Russell monitored the tire degradation closely during the opening stint, while the rest of the field, including his teammate Hamilton, committed to a standard two-stop strategy. Russell made a bold, independent decision. He proposed a one-stop strategy over the radio, believing he could nurse his hard compound tires to the end of the race. It was a high-risk gamble. The team accepted the challenge, leaving Russell to manage a long final stint while under heavy pressure from Hamilton behind. Russell executed the strategy with superb precision, managing his pace and tire wear to cross the line first on track, securing a spectacular victory. Although subsequent technical inspections revealed his car was underweight, leading to a disqualification, the performance itself had demonstrated Russell's growth. He had taken control of his own destiny, making a decisive strategic call under intense pressure. Toto Wolff took note of the performance, confident that Russell possessed the maturity to lead the team into the future. With Russell established as the team's anchor for 2025, Wolff turned his attention to the second seat. Rather than opting for an experienced driver from the existing grid, Wolff chose to take a calculated, long-term risk. He set his sights on Andrea Kimi Antonelli, a 17-year-old Italian sensation who was part of the Mercedes junior program. Antonelli had dominated every junior category he had entered, drawing comparisons to prodigies like Verstappen and Michael Schumacher, while the leap from Formula 2 directly to a Mercedes seat was immense. Wolff believed that Antonelli possessed the raw speed and mental fortitude required for the challenge. In late August, the team officially announced that the young Italian would partner Russell for the 2025 season, signaling the start of a bold new era for the Silver Arrows. This decision left Carlos Sainz with a critical choice to make regarding his own future. The Spaniard was the key piece in the driver market chessboard, with several teams eager to secure his services. Three primary options emerged for Sainz. The first was Stake Sauber, a team preparing to transition into the official Audi factory entry in the year 2026. Led by Alessandro Alunni Bravi, the project offered the immense backing and engineering resources of a major global manufacturer. Sainz's father had recently won the Dakar Rally with Audi, creating a strong family connection to the brand. However, the team's current performance was poor, and Sainz risked spending the peak years of his career struggling in the midfield while the Audi project was built from the ground up. The second suitor was Alpine, where the controversial and experienced Flavio Briatore had returned as an advisor. Briatore, a figure instrumental in the championship successes of Michael Schumacher and Fernando Alonso, was determined to rebuild the struggling French team. He pitched Alpine as a competitive, winning project, using his considerable powers of persuasion to entice Sainz. Yet, Alpine was also enduring a turbulent season marked by management changes and operational difficulties, creating uncertainty for any incoming driver. The third and most intriguing option was Williams Racing, led by James Vowles. The historic British team had suffered years of decline, often languishing at the back of the grid. But Vowles, a former strategist at Mercedes, had initiated a comprehensive rebuilding process. Vowles met with Sainz, offering a transparent assessment of the team's current weaknesses and a clear, long-term vision for the future. He did not promise immediate victories, but instead offered a stable, supportive environment where Sainz would be the central pillar of the team's resurgence alongside Alex Albon. For Sainz, the decision was agonizing. He had to balance the long-term potential of Audi, the dramatic promises of Alpine, and the honest, methodical project at Williams. A wrong choice could mean he would never stand on a Formula One podium again. Ultimately, Sainz chose to trust his intuition and the sincerity of James Vowles. On the Monday following the Belgian Grand Prix, Williams Racing officially announced that Carlos Sainz had signed a multi-year contract to drive for the team starting in 2025. It was a momentous coup for Williams and a significant statement of intent. The team had secured a proven Grand Prix winner, transforming their prospects and demonstrating to the entire grid that they were serious about returning to the front of the field. As the summer sun began to set on the paddock, the pieces of the puzzle had finally fallen into place. The 2024 season had delivered a series of extraordinary stories, the end of a legendary partnership, the rise of new winners, the fracturing of friendships, and the strategic maneuvering of teams preparing for a brand new era. The drivers returned to their cockpits, knowing that the battle for glory would continue, second by second, lap by lap, in the relentless pursuit of perfection. In the high-stakes world of Formula One, there are no permanent friendships and no guarantees of safety. There is only the next corner, the next race, and the unyielding drive to be the one who stands victorious when the dust finally settles. The roar of the engines in the distance always carries a certain quality of expectation, a reminder that in the world of high-speed motorsport, time is the only currency that truly matters. To understand the remarkable landscape of the 2024 Formula One season, one must first look back at the sheer suffocating dominance that preceded it, the year 2000. 23 had belonged entirely to one team and one driver. Red Bull Racing had constructed a campaign so statistically overwhelming that it bordered on the surreal. Out of 22 races, they had emerged victorious in 21. They had shattered records for the most wins in a single year, the most podium finishes, the most pole positions converted to victories, and the largest winning margin in the history of the sport. It was a level of domination that Formula One had rarely witnessed, leaving the rest of the grid looking almost foolish in their pursuit. Yet, as the paddock prepared for the 2024 season, an underlying truth of the sport began to reassert itself. In this ruthless environment, stability is merely an illusion, and the landscape can shift completely overnight. The first seismic shock arrived in February, before the new cars had even turned a wheel in anger. It was an announcement that reverberated far beyond the confines of the paddock, a piece of news so significant that it immediately dominated all other winter stories. Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion and the defining figure of his generation, had decided to leave Mercedes-AMG Petronas at the end of the year to join Scuderia Ferrari for the 2025 season. For 12 years, Hamilton and Mercedes had formed an iconic partnership, winning 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships together. The decision felt surreal, even to those closest to the center of power. Toto Wolff, the Mercedes team principal, found himself facing a long and public divorce of 24 races before his star driver would wear the famous red racing suit of their arch-rivals. The early timing of the announcement spoke volumes, suggesting that Hamilton had lost faith in the ability of Mercedes to deliver a championship-winning car in the near future. This sudden movement of the pieces on the corporate chessboard left several individuals in highly vulnerable positions. None felt this vulnerability more acutely than Carlos Sainz. The Spanish driver had spent 3 seasons at Ferrari, proving his worth as a highly capable and intelligent competitor. Indeed, he had been the only non-Red Bull driver to win a Grand Prix in 2023, taking a brilliant victory in Singapore. Yet through no fault of his own, he was being displaced to make room for Hamilton. The news was a hard blow, personal and unexpected. Finding himself without a seat for 2025, Sainz was forced to begin the season knowing that every single race would be an active job interview, a test of survival in a sport where a driver is only as good as his last performance. As the grid gathered in Bahrain for pre-season testing, the atmosphere was thick with tension and anticipation. Almost 3/4 of the drivers on the grid were entering the final year of their contracts, creating the conditions for an unprecedented silly season of negotiations and quiet conversations. Every driver was fighting for the same limited pieces of asphalt, aware that failure could mean the sudden end of a career. Adding to this volatile mix was an unprecedented storm surrounding Red Bull Racing.